Dear friends, here are 4 new adventures from Thomas's branch line. In them you will meet up again with several old friends, including, of course, Thomas himself. Oh, and there is a new friend for you called Victoria. We all hope you will like her as much as we do. The author. Toby was worried. So many workmen were needed at the quarry that Henrietta wasn't able to carry them all. Bertie did his best to help, but he couldn't get closer than the quarry gate. "We need another coach to take the men all the way inside," Toby complained. One morning Bertie didn't feel well, and Henrietta was all on her own. More and more workmen climbed into her. "Help!" Henrietta exclaimed. "I shan't be able to move." "We can't either," grumbled the workman. "We're too squashed together." Henrietta had a balcony at each end, and soon even these were packed. She was fuller than ever before. Toby had a hard job starting. "Come on, come on, come on, come on!" Toby fussed impatiently, his wheels slipping on the damp rails. People in the street stared as the train struggled past. Toby rang his bell cheerfully, but Henrietta wasn't so happy. Suddenly, a car came out of the side street in front of them. Toby's driver put on the brakes at once. The train stopped quickly, and some of the workmen were pushed against the railings of Henrietta's front balcony. It bent, but luckily it didn't break. A policeman passing on a bicycle stopped and made a note on his pad. "Oh dear," Henrietta said to herself. "That means trouble, I think." She was right. The next day an inspector visited the quarry manager. "There is a by-law, sir," he said, "which says that passengers should not be carried on the end balconies of railway carriages." "I'm sorry, Inspector," the manager said. "It doesn't usually happen, but the bus couldn't run today." "Please make sure it doesn't happen again," said the inspector sternly. The quarry manager telephoned the Fat Controller to see if he could help. The Fat Controller wasn't hopeful, and the quarry manager went home to tea shaking his head sadly. A few days later, Thomas stopped at the station by the river. As they waited, he heard a buzzing noise from behind a thick hedge that grew near the platform. Suddenly there was a rustling and a loud crash. A man's head appeared above the hedge. He had a saw in his hands. "It's nice to see the railway once more," he said cheerfully. "It's been like a jungle in there." Later Thomas stopped there again. "Hello," said a shaky voice. Thomas was puzzled, but his driver heard it too. He looked over the hedge and saw a very old, very broken down railway coach. "What's your name?" asked the driver. "Victoria," replied the coach shyly. "Are you Thomas's driver?" But before he could answer, the guard's whistle blew and they had to go. At the top station, Toby told Thomas about the workmen. "I really need another coach," he said sadly. "But we've just found one," said Thomas excitedly. "She's in an orchard near the river, and she's old and lonely." "She's got no wheels and her roof leaks like a sieve," interrupted Thomas's driver. "Don't even think about it." But Thomas did think about it, and asked the Fat Controller. The Fat Controller listened, made some arrangements, and then telephoned the quarry manager. "Good morning, Toby and Henrietta," the manager greeted them the next day. "It's going to be all right," he went on. "The Fat Controller says don't worry about another coach because he has something up his sleeve." The Fat Controller had left Boko in charge of the branch line while Edward went to the works to be mended. Edward needed to be fit before the summer visitors came. After a week he was growing bored, but then a newcomer arrived. She was a wooden coach, and Edward thought there was something familiar about her. That evening, he heard a quiet, timid voice. "Excuse me," it said. "You're Edward, aren't you?" "That's right," he smiled. "Haven't I seen you somewhere before?" "Perhaps," replied the coach. "There were lots of us built for the Furness Railway. That's your old line, so Thomas's driver says." That's right, smiled Edward. What's your name? Victoria, said the coach. When I was too old to work, I was made into a summer house in an orchard. Now a kind gentleman with a top hat says that I can be mended and work on the railway again. That would be the Fat Controller, said Edward. Did he say where you would work? There'd be plenty for you to do on my line, said Edward hopefully. Victoria hesitated. I think the, Fat Controller knew, she said, but he didn't say. Where did you work in the old days? Asked Edward. My friend Helena and I worked on a branch line to a station called Lakeside, Victoria said. There was a big lake with steamers on it. Windermere it was called. Albert was our engine. He was old, but very gentlemanly and polite. She broke off, chuckling. Except once, Victoria explained. It was winter and very cold. Even the lake was beginning to freeze over, and that didn't often happen. I don't suppose you had many passengers off the steamer then, put in Edward. You'd be surprised, Victoria said. For some it was the easiest way of getting from the town on the other side of the lake. Anyhow, on this winter's day the snow wasn't too bad at the junction, so we were all right when we set out. As we got near the hills the snow got thicker. We reached a place called Haverthwaite, and there were 2 tunnels, one at each end of the station. Albert didn't care about a bit of snow. Silly soft stuff, he called it. Thomas used to say that too, smiled Edward. The steamer was late that day. Ice in the water, they said, and that made us late too. Albert was hurrying because when people got off the steamer, they had to catch other trains at our junction. Victoria paused. She chuckled to herself before she went on. Albert had been boasting about how good he was with the snow. Well, we soon got back to Haverthwaite, and Albert stopped with his buffers right at the mouth of the tunnel. The guard's whistle sounded. Albert didn't waste any time. He set off with a tremendous blast of steam, but the steam blew an enormous lump of snow off the tunnel mouth. It poured down and landed with a whomp on his cab. Albert's driver quickly put on the brakes, the train stopped, and then a lot more snow came down on Helena and me. She was almost completely buried, and half of me was too. Albert couldn't move an inch. He wanted to, but he didn't dare in case he brought more snow down. The passengers weren't hurt, but it was the next morning before the men dug us out. I've never been so cold. Albert never boasted about snow again, though. I wonder why, chuckled Edward. The work needed to make Victoria as good as new took a long time. Summer came with a long, hot, dry spell. There was no rain at all for many weeks. The sun shone from a clear blue sky, and the engines grew hotter and hotter. Sometimes Daisy noticed creatures coiled up beside the railway, enjoying the sunshine. Usually they took no notice as she passed, but now and then they would slither away to hide beneath the dry grass. How do they move? Wondered Daisy. They've got no legs. Neither of you, laughed the driver, but you manage all right. They're grass snakes, and they move by wriggling their bodies very fast from side to side. How clever, thought Daisy, and she told Thomas and Percy about it. Percy shuddered. I don't like the sound of that, he said. I hope they don't come near me. They won't, his driver reassured him, smiling. They're harmless, and much more frightened of you than you are of them, I promise. I'm not scared, Percy, said Daisy scornfully. Surely you're not frightened of a few harmless wriggly things. Percy wasn't comforted. Ugh, he said. Just the thought of those snakes makes me shiver. Daisy thought he was being very silly. One afternoon she brought some boxes up from the junction, then handled them carefully. It's a special delivery, explained Daisy's driver. What's so special about it? Asked Daisy. It's live eels, her driver said. Sort of water snakes. They're for a special menu at the restaurant in the high street. Very carefully the porters stacked the boxes on the platform. Daisy moved back so that the milk van could be coupled onto her. The pile of boxes was now just in front of her, while porters began to load empty milk churns into her van. Suddenly a small boy ran past. He accidentally caught the top box of the pile with his coat sleeve. It hit the platform and burst open onto the rails in front of Daisy. Out cascaded a knot of slithery black eels, which at once tried to wriggle away in all directions. Some of them went underneath Daisy. Eee! She squealed. Help! A porter ran to see what was the matter. He found Daisy pulling a face of such disgust that he had to laugh. "Get me out of here!" wailed Daisy. "Stop making such a fuss," ordered her driver. "They're only eels. They're not going to hurt you. You've blown a fuse anyway, so you have to wait to be mended." In no time, all the eels had been rescued and put into another box. None the worse for their adventure. A porter came to take them well out of harm's way. Daisy couldn't bear to watch. A fitter came and tried to mend her, but she was in such a state of nerves that it was no use. Thomas had to pick up her passengers and take them back to the junction. That night in the shed, Percy and Toby made up lots of what they called wriggly jokes, which Daisy thought were very silly and not funny at all. "Never mind," said Toby. "Near my old railway there's a place called Ely. Think of that!" Daisy shuddered. It was the last thing she wanted to think about. At last Victoria was ready. The Fat Controller came to see her. "Edward will take you to Thomas's junction," he said. "Then go with Thomas to meet Toby and Henrietta, who you will work with." Victoria's wheels hummed happily on the rails. "It's wonderful to be running again," she thought. Edward introduced her to Boko at his own station, and they soon reached Thomas's junction. Thomas and the Fat Controller were waiting for them. Thomas's driver was amazed at the change in Victoria. "I hope you feel better," the Fat Controller told her. "You certainly look better than you did when we first saw you." "I feel wonderful, thank you, sir," smiled Victoria. Victoria was coupled behind Annie and Clarabel, and they set off up the valley. At the station by the river, an inspector met them. "Terence is in trouble," he said. "I'll ride in your cab, Thomas, but go carefully until we know what has happened." A little way along the line, Terence's owner was building a barn. The lane to the barn ran along the top of a cutting just outside the tunnel. That afternoon, Terence had been pulling a trailer loaded with stones for the barn, when a boulder had fallen into the lane from the verge. Terence swerved towards the edge of the cutting to avoid the boulder, and of course the trailer followed. Suddenly the trailer's wheels hit a muddy patch and slipped sideways towards the railway. The weight of the stone dragged the trailer further over the edge. Terence tried to hang on, but the trailer broke away and bumped down the steep hill towards the railway. Luckily there was a large bush on the cutting side. The trailer ran into it and stopped, balancing dangerously. The heavy stone tumbled down the slope and landed beside the railway with a crash. "Thomas's train is due," gasped Terence. His owner ran to telephone a warning to the station. His call was just in time. With the inspector in his cab, Thomas moved cautiously along the line. By the time they reached the place of the accident, the farmer had managed to fasten the trailer so that it would not move. The inspector made sure that the building stones had not damaged the railway. "All right," he told Thomas's driver as he climbed back into the cab. "Proceed at caution, please, and drop me at the next signal box so I can report what's happened." Thomas and the inspector reached the top station safely and found Toby and Henrietta waiting for them. Victoria and Henrietta liked each other at once and soon became the best of friends. "There cannot be many railways," announced the Fat Controller, "who can run a complete train of stock as old as Toby, Henrietta and Victoria. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you 3 cheers for Toby's vintage train. I'm very proud of all 3 of you, and I know you will be a credit to me." Now Victoria is as happy as can be. She helps Henrietta to take the workmen to and from the quarry, and at other times you will see her with Thomas, Annie and Clarabel running happily along the valley. She knows she is very lucky. "This is much better than being a summer house in an orchard," she sometimes thinks to herself. "It's great to be useful again." I think we can be sure, can't we, that Victoria will be useful for many years to come.